Hello, I'm the Pink Phantom, and this is my podcast. Join me as I delve into the world of games and gaming, and especially old school RPGs. Together, let's voyage into the astral realm and check out my Phantom Thoughts. In this episode, I've got calls in about the role of GMs in RPGs. And in Tales of the Dragon Slayer, I am doing some exploring of the game world, following what happens to the humanoids who were in the first no coalition that broke up after the merchant caravan. After they confronted the merchant caravan, a lot of different humanoid species went in different ways, and so I use a process of exploring the world as they move about it. A lot of dice rolling, very procedural. So even if you don't normally tune in to the last part of my podcast for the Tales of the Dragon Slayers campaign, I think this could be something of interest to you if you have an interest in kind of procedural world building and moving about the landscape, a hex crawl type situation. So hope you'll enjoy. Hope you'll stay tuned, and at the very least, tune in what these guys have to say about GMs. Very interesting stuff here. So let's get to it.
Hey, this is Jason. Just want to call in about your latest episode where you talk about the role of the GM. And I think it really depends on the game. I don't know that the role of the GM, I know what you're saying, is the way the hobby's looking at them changing. Because obviously, every GM's going to run their style, and people that are traditional GMs are still going to run games in traditional style. But I don't know. I've evolved to a mixture of them. I'm not sure I like the idea of the GM just being an arbiter as far as just sitting back and the players rolling on everything and doing everything and reading the module and not, you know what I mean? But I'm not as big a fan of in-game world building by the players as well. I'm okay with that to some degree, but that's not really my thing. But I know for me, my methods have evolved some. So, like, I just finished a mini campaign or an adventure, not really a campaign, an adventure of After the Bomb, Palladium's game, and we did the Roadhogs adventure. So, or an adventure out of the Roadhogs book. So the characters had to infiltrate a biker gang and to get some information. And, during that time, I did have to improv. I had to bounce off they came up with things to do that had nothing to do with what was written in the adventure. So obviously I had to, react to those and do that, which is a normal GM thing. And sometimes if they asked about something, yeah, sure, that makes sense. Of course that's available. Or sometimes, when one of them said, oh, I want to get a girlfriend, my old lady, my biker girlfriend. And so of course, yeah, you can try to do that, when they're at the biker rally and stuff. But, another one, is there a computer in this office? Well, and they were trying to infiltrate, and they were convinced there was a computer in this building and in this office, but they never actually saw the computer or heard that there was one in there. They just assumed it was in there, and they went through this elaborate scheme, and they got in there, and well, there wasn't a computer in there, so that was a no. If they had looked on the other side of the warehouse, they would have seen a pinup calendar hanging on the wall with cute female dogs and with certain dates circled on it, but they didn't look on the other side of the warehouse, so they didn't see that calendar. Anyhow, so in that campaign, while we did have things that were based on charts, like random encounters as I went down the road and different things, instead of me rolling on those charts, I would have the players roll. And I like to do that. I like to have that way you're keeping the players involved and you're not sitting behind your screen just rolling the dice. So there are times I did roll the dice, and there are times that's appropriate. But if you're coming at the random encounter, there's no harm in telling the player. Yeah, sorry this message is so long. I know I get cut off there. I was just saying I would have the players roll, and then, of course, I would still adjudicate the table. So it's not like the players had the random encounter tables in front of them that they were rolling on. I would just ask them to roll the dice to keep them involved. But I don't know. The problem is OSR and NSR and all this stuff is such a niche and a niche and a niche of the hobby that most people never, ever encounter it. And I know we're involved in it and immersed in it, and to us it's a big deal. But You can go in game shops and ask questions. You go to a role-playing shop where they have the big Warhammer display and the big D&D display, and I bet you the majority of the people in that shop have never heard of any of these games that we deal with. You know what I mean? Especially a lot of the indie stuff and the stuff on itch.io, and and the other thing with games these days are with the Kickstarters and all, and they end up just being Kickstarter games, so they're poof, they're flashes in the pan and they're gone. And I realize to some degree they're out there as PDFs, some of them, not all of them. But so any influence is going to be long term. I think we do see some influence. I think we see things like Failing Forward starting to get in the more mainstream games. So I think we do see this influence, but I think it's going to be years and years before you get real serious inroads. And I don't know that you're ever going to get a point where the GM is sitting back and it's all just the players making the world, because there are a lot of people that don't like to make the world. There are a lot of people that play the game that want to explore. That's why they play RPGs. They want to explore and wonder, just like a computer game. And asking them what the name of the tavern is pulls them out of the game. There are people that don't like that. So I don't think that's going to be the standard. But that's just me. And I probably didn't answer your question at all, but those are some ramblings. Talk to you later.
Hey, Pink Phantom, interesting episode on the role of the referee. Are they a curator of experience, or are they just a glorified facilitator? And if, like you say, we're having a trend towards more of that facilitator role with just random tables and everything, I think eventually the pendulum will swing back the other way, because it's a different experience. As you know, you're playing a lot of solo. I've played a lot of GM-less games with my girls. It's fun in its own right, but I don't feel like it can replace having a good, solid referee who's guiding things and subverting expectations with coherency, rather than the expectations are subverted because you're just rolling a random die and now you have to integrate this weird thing. It can be fun and it can be enjoyable as a creative exercise, but it's just not the same. The experiences are different. So I think people will want to enjoy one experience, and maybe people will continue to want to enjoy those experiences just because that's the way they want to play. But I don't think the curated experience is going away as a whole in the hobby. And I'm not saying you said that. So, yeah, I guess those are just some of my thoughts. We've got trends that ebb and flow, and I don't think you can replace the curated experience. I think there's definitely room for the GM as facilitator, or everyone taking that responsibility in a GM-less kind of way. And they're both valid, and everything in between can be just as valid. And I mean, some people have said people go on railroads, or not railroads, but they go on roller coasters, which are on rails, and they enjoy them. So even if you have a GM that has you on a railroad, it could still be fun. And there are some players that are just completely happy with going along with that. So I think it's all going to come down to preference, and those preferences change over time. But thanks again for the episode and the interesting ponderings. Take care.
I'm not sure what else to add to all that. I think I rambled my way out in the last episode. It's interesting how the role of the GM in RPGs has evolved, and the different branches it's taken, depending on whether you're trying to add more essentially to the GM so that the players can seek a more immersive experience, or if you're seeking to take away a lot of what the GM would do in the more traditional styles of game, so that the players have more control over not only the direction the player characters go, but even in terms of the world building and what kind of world they're exploring. So it's a really great discussion, and I'm glad you guys called in. And now, more from my solo AD&D RPG campaign, Tales of the Dragon Slayers. Previously, in my Tales of the Dragon Slayers campaign, I had gone through a battle between a group of gnolls that had taken possession of a keep that was meant to guard the King's Road, and the mercenaries that were trying to get a merchant caravan through. Those gnolls, over the course of time, had recruited a sort of an alliance of creatures, including ogres, orcs, some other gnolls, some bugbears, and some hobgoblins. And over the course of the battle, most of these creatures had their morale had broken and they had left the battlefield, except for the orcs, who did in fact fail morale, retreated into their cave, and then were enticed out by some of the orcs that had stayed on the battlefield and sort of retaken to the battlefield about the time the battle was over, encouraging the merchants, the remaining merchants and mercenaries to leave, and they began sacking the wagons, the merchandise, and then the gnolls, who had also failed morale, retreated into their keep, had come back out with some trolls they had with them and confronted the orcs to get their share. And it ended with both the orcs and the trolls eventually leaving, the orcs taking some of the goods with them. And the sort of the part of the world that I had been covering was with the party, and the party was already some of the party and some of their troops had combined with some other troops and were going to get the gnolls out of that keep. So there was another battle a little later between them. But there is a matter of what happened to those creatures after they retreated. Where in this world are they going to end up? And so that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to determine their movements, see what they encounter out there, see where maybe they'll settle down. They won't go directly north or south because there are an occupied town or occupied keeps between them, and having just been in battle, they're not looking for confrontation. The bugbears, I do actually know their eventual destination because in another previous episode, the party had run across bugbears in the upper part of the hill of their keep, and I had determined just by rolling dice if that was the same group, because the bugbears were not what I call a lair group, a group that's the complete group that you would find in a lair that's moving back into the area after the dragon stopped rampaging. So when I rolled that the bugbears were in the party keep were a lair group, I rolled a fairly low chance, I don't remember what it was, to see if that was the same, if it was the other part of the bugbears that were with the gnolls, and the answer was yes. So the bugbears are going to be kind of making their way, trying to avoid confrontation and get back to the keep because they don't know the party has really taken over that keep. Of the other creatures, only the orcs were a lair group. The ogres were a lair group. The other creatures have a lair out there somewhere, or a lair group that's looking to establish itself. So I'm going to use a d6 to kind of determine their movements, avoiding the north and south immediately. Once they've moved out a little ways, they can move. I'm doing this on a hex map, so 1d6 works out well for deciding which face side they're going to go out of. The initial movement of the bugbears and the orcs and the ogres was to the west. The initial movement of the hobgoblins and the other group of gnolls was to the east. I don't know about the orcs and trolls, so I'm going to roll for that as well. And as they move, I'll roll to see if they have any random encounters as they move around the hills in front of them. And if so, I'll roll some dice. I'm going to look at the DMG random encounters table. And I'm also going to look at the Monster Manual too, which includes encounters for creatures from both Monster Manuals as well as the Fiend Folio. And the good thing about this is the DMG uses percentile dice. The Monster Manual 2 uses 2d10. So I can, roll my percentile dice, look as the percentile for the DMG, and just add them together as if they were 2d10 for the Monster Manual 2 roll, and just kind of see what kind of creatures we have, what makes sense with what we know about the area, or what would be interesting. And of course, I have the other tables in the DMG to see if they have we're going to call it something like a castle or a small village or something. And of course, we have the reaction tables if they do encounter something. And I think the first thing I want to start off with is determining where the orcs are going, because in the orc entry in the monster manual, there's a percentage chance that they also include having some ogres with them. The group of ogres that was also part of this battle, they lost their leadership. So they are just a group of common ogres along with some women and some young. And so if they run across the orcs, they and the orcs run across each other, there's a chance they could combine. So even though the orcs left the battlefield later than the ogres did, the ogres would have had to take time to gather up essentially the family units and what treasure they had with them that would not have been taken onto the battlefield with them. So I think if the orcs go in the same direction, there's a chance they'll run into each other. So just to make things kind of clear, the hex map I'm looking at has the points of the hexes up and down and flat sides left and right, so east and west. So the potential directions of travel are west, northwest, northeast, east, southeast, southwest. And we're going to roll a d6 with one being to the northwest. So let's go with that right now. See where the orcs went. And on a 6, they will go. So one is northwest, northeast, east, southeast, southwest. So 6 is west. So they are essentially following the ogres. So let's see if they will run into each other. So in the hills surrounding the battlefield, you have a 1 in 10 chance of an encounter. So I'm going to roll 2d10 essentially. It's percentile dice, but I'm treating them as d10s. And if either of them rolls a 1, then that means that the orcs or the ogres, one found the other. So let's see what we got here. And we have that would be a 15 if it was percentile. So they do run across each other. So now we're going to do a reaction roll. Now on the reaction roll, the lower, the more negative the reaction is, the higher, the more positive. Since the ogres are in kind of dire straits, they've lost their leadership, they got beaten up badly in the battle, they didn't get any loot out of the merchant caravan, I'm going to say they're more receptive to joining up with these orcs who did basically all those things. They didn't get run off the battlefield. They did get run off the battlefield, most of them, but the others had success. They brought them back out. They were able to loot one of the wagons and take it with them and get some goods. So I'm going to give this a plus. We'll give it a plus 10% to the roll here, for the ogres and the orcs. So let's roll to see how receptive are the orcs to even try to get the ogres to team up with them. And they roll a 24, which is not good, plus 10%, because they can see the ogres are kind of in a receptive state. And there's also a bonus because they're both chaotic evil. It's a 15% bonus, so that's plus 25%. So that's 49%. So that's a neutral reaction. So they kind of run across them. Maybe they'll team up. Maybe they won't. They're having a conversation with them. So let's see what the ogre reaction with. And they're going to get that same plus 25% total. And they roll a 76, which plus 25 puts them over 100%, which is enthusiastic, friendly, immediate acceptance. So the ogres are happy to see these orcs that they view as a very powerful group because of the success, the overall success they had on the battlefield. That they did not entirely flee. Some fled, some didn't. Funnily enough, the orc leadership was like the first group to leave. The leadership of the orcs just fled, and that caused a lot of the others to go back into their cave. And I should probably add them to the list here so that I roll for them to see if they run into their comrades again. They fled sort of southeast, so they fled in a different direction. southwest, excuse me. The bugbears also fled in the direction of the ogres and the orcs. So let's see if they happen to run across them. No one's, so they don't end up running across them. So now that just leaves the trolls for this first sort of move here. Let's see what direction they went in. And they roll a 6 as well. So they could be encountered in this group, and that could be good, that could be bad. So let's see, did the trolls run across the bugbears first? No. And do the trolls run across this ogre orc group? Also no. So no encounters between those groups. They're just all in the same kind of general direction. And, that covers a lot of territory in these hexes. So now here's a question. Now that the ogres and orcs have combined, will they choose to make this area not too far beyond the keep as a lair? Find a cave complex that they can take possession of. I'm going to cut 10% chance from this chance. The chance of the ogres being in their lair is 20%. The chance of the orcs is 35%. So I'm going to cut that down. I'm going to use the orc, since the orcs are kind of in control here. I'm going to use the orc percentage, and so 25% or less to establish their lair here. And with a 33, they don't do it. So if I hadn't had that minus 10%, they would have established it here. So let's move on to the next day. And just to keep it in line with the campaign, this is kind of behind where the main part of the story that I've been relating in this podcast so far has been. The battle was on day 111. Since the dragon had started its rampage, that's kind of how I've been denoting it. I've been trying to figure out another way, another kind of calendar to keep track, but I'm not quite satisfied with where that's at. So that was day 112. That was the first day after. So this will be day 113, and we'll be rolling for more. But we'll start off with this orc ogre combo here. And they're going to move with a 3. They're going to move back to the east. Interesting. I don't think they would do that because that would take them back to the keep. So we're going to roll again. So on a 5, that's going to move them southwest. Interestingly enough, that moves them in the same direction as the bugbears. So let's see if they run into the bugbears here. And they do not. All right, so now let's see, there's 3 checks for random encounters in the hills. So let's see if they run into anything else. So, see our noon check here. Nothing. And we'll do the night check. Also nothing. And we'll consider the pre-dawn check the one where we check to see if they ran into the bugbears. So now let's do the same thing for the bugbears. Their noon check, they don't run into anything, and their night check, nothing. So nothing for those. So where do the trolls go? They started, are all these groups going to end up moving together? Let's see. The trolls on a 2 are moving northeast. So that's interesting because that is in the general direction of the settlement, but kind of away from it. And it's a section that I have not delineated on my map yet as to the type of terrain. So now we can roll on the terrain type chart and see where we go from here. They're in hills, and they're going to be heading potentially down into the valley. So the valley could start in the next couple of hexes, or it might not. And I'm using 10-mile hexes, and I'm using 20-mile per day movement on foot. So let's get to that chart. What is this I'm using as a bookmark? Something about how to adjudicate gods. I probably need to put that in a notebook somewhere. All right, but anyway, here's the chart for terrain type. It's a D20 roll. We're going to be coming from the hills, and with a roll of an 8, that gives us desert. That's interesting. Desert hex. Let's see if there's any type of a settlement here. That's a D percentile roll. and 75% uninhabited. And now we'll do some rolls for encounters. Pre-dawn, nothing. Noon, nothing. And night. We have a night encounter, but we do need to see what that next hex is, because that's going to take them into the next hex before they settle down for the night. So what will that terrain type be? Coming from desert, going to plains. So this is plains. So that makes sense, because the settlement nearby is kind of a river valley, sort of a plain situation. So that's a good terrain type. So what will run across the trolls at night? So we'll roll our D percentile, we'll check the DMG, we'll check the monster manual as a 2D10. So it's a 72, so that would be 9 on the other chart. So 72% in desert is a Pegasus. Okay, we have had a Pegasus roll before. One kind of flew by the party's keep at one point, but just kept flying on by. What does the Monster Manual 2 say? It says for desert, a 9 is a Bactrian camel. Oh, I'm sorry, this is plains. The other hex was it. So plains would be, the 9 would be a wild boar. And on the other chart, plains, a 72 would be more ogres. Okay, that's interesting. So ogres or wild boar, I can't decide which would be better for this situation. So let's roll the percentile. 50 or less, wild boar. Higher than 50, ogres. And it is the wild boars. That was with a 4%. So pretty low roll. Let's see in the Monster Manual what it says about wild boars. Does it say anything? Yes, wild boars. I just realized I didn't even check to see if the trolls were just going to settle down in that other hex. So let's roll that real quick. It's 40%. I'm going to use my minus 10% again. And they roll an 80%, so they didn't settle down there. So they run these wild boars. They're probably hungry. So let's check encounter distance. Well, no, let's check surprise first. Is anybody surprised? The boars are surprised on a 2. The trolls are not surprised. So that is 64 minus 2 on the encounter distance. 4, 8, 12, 15, 19, 20 inches. Minus 2 is 18 inches. Trolls move at 12 inches, so they can easily catch up to the boars in those 2 surprise segments. That's all they can do. Let's see how many boars we have. It's 1d12. So we're going to d12. It's 6. And according to the boar entry, only one of them is going to be sort of the male boar. The others will be sows and young. I think they refer to them as sounders. Is that right? Sows and sounders in a 1-to-4 ratio. So rolling 6, there's 1 male boar, 1 female boar, and then 4 children, essentially. So we're going to see if some hungry orcs get themselves some boars, but I may just hold that till next time, because this is getting longer than I thought it would be. I'm going to roll to see what the rest of these creatures are going to do. Let's see which way the hobgoblins went. Let's see here. On a 4, they went 1, 2, 3, 4. That would be southeast. And the other group of gnolls, 3. So that's going to be directly east. Let's roll for potential encounters for these groups. We've got the hobgoblins. They didn't roll anything. And we've got the gnolls. And they rolled a nighttime encounter as well. And also the gnolls are going into unknown territory, so we're going to have to roll on the terrain chart for them. They're running out of the hills. So 73% coming out of hills. I'm sorry, this should be a D20 roll. 19, that's going to be a pond. So they run into a pond in the midst of these hills. So kind of a little lake, a little sort of hilly lake here. A hilly lake. So ponds are considered to be the same terrain type. So let's see what kind of encounter they run into. 94%, or a 13 on the other chart. 94% on hills is wolves. On the monster manual 2, a 13 is lycanthrope werewolf. Now, we've run into werewolves before closer to the fort, so I don't think these are the same werewolves, if they are indeed werewolves. But let's see, is it wolves or is it just werewolves? Or is it both? That would be interesting. I wonder, let's look at the monster manual entries there. It doesn't say that you find wolves with werewolves. That's actually kind of a little disappointing. So let's see which they are. So let's do, we're going to break out the old 1d8 for this. I don't think we've rolled a d8 for anything. Let's use all of our dice. So on a 1 to 3, it's wolves. On a 4 to 6, it's werewolves. On a 7, it's a pack of wolves with a werewolf mixed in. And on a 8, it's a mixed group. So let's see what we get here. We get a 5, so we got werewolves. So how many werewolves do we have? What's the potential here? Potential for werewolves is 3 to 18. I should know that, probably. All right, 3 to 18. 3, 5, 11. 11 werewolves. And since this is a night encounter, they will be in werewolf form, prowling and hunting. Is this the werewolf lair? Nope. 90% on a chance of 25%. So let's see. Distance, 64. It's -1 to each die for being in hills. So 3, 4, 6, 10, 11, 12. 12 minus 6, 6 inches apart. We should have checked for surprise first. Surprise, werewolves. Nope. Surprise, gnolls. Yes, 2 segments of surprise. So that cuts down the distance to 10 inches. No, I'm sorry, to 4 inches. So since both groups are intelligent, let's check the reaction rolls. Both are chaotic evil, so there's a plus 15%. So the reaction by the gnolls is 89%, including the bonus. Friendly immediate action. For the werewolves, the roll is, including that 25% bonus, 79%. Same. So these 2 groups are going to get along. So let's see if the gnolls settle down and make this their lair. There's a 20% chance, but since they found some friends, I'm going to add 10% to that. So there's a 30% chance they will make their lair here. Or that their lair, they will find their lair group here. So we're not going to alter it instead. So we're not actually going to alter it because I don't know where their lair group is. 60, their lair group isn't here. So they've made some friends, but they're going to continue moving on. Essentially, they found a good water source, and they know that they'll be safe here for the night, and then they can move on. Because It wasn't the highest level of acceptance, which is enthusiastically friendly, immediate acceptance. So I don't think the werewolves are going to take them back to their lair, though they may help them find their own lair folk if they've found them in the immediate area. So that leaves the orc leaders. Let's see which direction they're traveling in. 3 is southeast. So from where they were, let's see, that would take them directly, well, they could skirt, they're going to try to skirt one of the keeps and move across the road. So for this encounter check, we're going to give them a 2 in 10 chance because they might run across a patrol. They don't. And then their other 2 encounter checks are negative and negative. So no encounters. They safely make it across. They're moving sort of away from everybody else. So there's a small group of orcs moving through the wilderness here. And so that's almost the end of day 113. We're going to have to see how the trolls and the boars deal with one another. But this is going on almost 30 minutes. So I'm going to cut this short here. And we will pick up with the adventures of the humanoids in the world of the Dragon Slayers. Maybe next time, maybe a time after that. I don't know. But we will pick it up. So until then, hope you tune in next time. The opening music of this podcast is Strength of the Titans, and the closing music is Late Night Radio, both by Kevin MacLeod of Incompetech.com, licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 4.0 license. Thank you for listening to Phantom Thoughts. I would love to hear your feedback. You don't have to be part of the show. If you want to contact me and let me know, hey, these are for your eyes only. I just wanted to give you thoughts, ideas, response, and it's really for your eyes or ears only. That's absolutely fine. I'd love to hear from you either way. So just let me know when you contact me. Just, I don't want to be part of the show. There are lots of different ways you can contact me. You can send me an email at phantomthoughtspodcast@gmail.com. And that can be a regular email, or you can attach an audio file to it. You can use the message button on my podcast site on podcasters.spotify.com/pod/show/phantom thoughts. You can contact me via my Google Voice number, 864-209-1441. You can contact me via SpeakPipe at www.speakpipe.com/phantom thoughts. You can contact me on Discord, The Pink Phantom. All this contact information is listed in the show notes of every episode. And thank you for those who call in. Thank you for those who don't call in. I appreciate you listening and hope you'll listen again next time. Until then, I hope you have a great day.